What's going on, everyone? Today we're performing an oil change on a 2018 Porsche Cayenne. This is the base model with the normally aspirated 3.6 cylinder engine. Before we get going, I have a little warning. This is not a cheap endeavor, at least not the first time. Most American and Japanese cars provide a way to reset the oil service reminder via some sort of input combination, depressing the brake pedal while holding the trip meter and cycling the ignition, for example. But Porsche denies us this ability. We need to perform the oil maintenance reminder via the vehicle's diagnostic port. I'll be using the Launch CRP129X. It's an OBD2 scan tool with oil reset capability. At $239, it's not particularly inexpensive. However, after much research, I found it is among the cheapest options that will actually interface with a Porsche. You can buy a $30 scan tool that will read generic codes. $90 gets you one that will send the vehicle a generic oil reset signal, but it takes something in this price range and up to actually work with a Cayenne. For comparison's sake, the Snap-on Solus Edge will do it, but costs a couple grand. Rumor has it the Zurich Pro from Harbor Freight will also work, but it's $1,200. So when you consider the alternatives and the fact a Porsche dealer charges $500 per oil change, a one-time $239 purchase is not too bad. Plus, it'll work with all your other cars, and it's just handy to have an OBD2 scanner around. That out of the way, let's get going. Before getting the car on the ramps, let's make sure we've got the necessary tools to get this done. Here is the Launch CRP129X scan and reset tool I mentioned a moment ago. It really is a pretty cool piece of equipment. Next up is my 3/8" torque wrench. You'll only end up using this on the filter housing. This one isn't totally necessary, but if you have one, grab it. Here, we've got the 36mm socket. Unlike the previous item, this one is mandatory. Also required is a socket extension. It's 10 inches and was just barely big enough. If you can, go for 12. Then we have just a regular 3/8 ratchet. You'll also need an 18mm box wrench. Very important, you can't substitute an 18mm socket here. As we'll see in a bit, there isn't enough room to get it and a ratchet head in place. Here is the 10mm socket. We'll need to remove the plastic skid plates. Actually, I'm not sure that's what they're technically called, but you get the point. A 6mm hex bit is also on deck. I used one of my long ones because they were easier to get into place. You might be able to get away with an Allen wrench, but it will be tight. Consider this one optional, but highly recommended. This is just a very small screwdriver I used to remove the filter housing O-ring. If you don't have one, don't worry, I'm sure you could use something else. Next, we've got a replacement drain plug. I'm on the fence about the necessity of this. Unlike any other vehicle I've worked on, the Cayenne's drain plug has an integrated washer, so you can't just replace the cheap bit. I know many people will say this needs to be replaced every oil change, but I've reused them and never had a problem. I'm using a filter from Mali or Mali. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's model OX983D. According to Amazon, this will not fit a 2018 Cayenne. However, the manufacturer claims it will. I trust them more than Amazon's notoriously erroneous product listings, so I went with it. They're a European-based OEM manufacturer, so I felt pretty comfortable buying despite Amazon's warnings. Then we come to the oil itself. I almost could have made a mini video on this topic alone. The Cayenne doesn't just require 5 or 0W30, they also require it to be Porsche C30 or VW504 spec synthetic liquid pterodactyls. I was able to find an Audi dealer which published a VW Group technical service bulletin listing all approved oils. The one I went with, Total Quartz Ineo, was on the TSB. Furthermore, my dad is a member of the Porsche Club of America. After speaking with him, he mentioned the club's technical advisor and owner of an independent Porsche repair shop swears by this product. So I was sold. you'll need 7 quarts. I know that when you open the hood, it says something along the lines of "We recommend mobile one." Just be aware, that doesn't mean any mobile one, only their ESP recipe meets the C30 spec. Online, it was only available from sketchy third-party sellers, so I went with Total. I'm going to place a link to everything presented here in the description below. These are Amazon affiliate links for which the channel will earn a small commission. Use of them is greatly appreciated. Okay, now without further delay, let's get under the vehicle. After ramping up, don't forget to block the rear tire and throw on some jack stands for that extra margin of safety. If you want to put the fear of God in you, just Google a pic of a floor jack failure. Not pretty stuff. Heads can definitely pop like grapes with cars drop on them. Once on the ground, we'll first need to remove the 13 bolts retaining the plastic undercarriage plates. However, in my case, it was only 12 thanks to the sloppy work of the local Porsche dealer. They must have forgotten to reinstall that last one. On a side note, I've never been one to trust a dealer without question. For example, when I asked the service advisor what torque value I should use when reinstalling the drain plug, he said, and I quote,
"I think about 30 Newton meters, or it might be like 20 or 40.
Got it. Thanks. I would have preferred a simple,
I don't know.
I was also told by parts that my Cayenne didn't have an oil filter drain plug. As we'll see in a bit, also bullshit, so good lord. I'm glad my vehicle was put together by Porsche the manufacturer, not Porsche the dealer. With the plates out of the way, we now have access to the oil drain plug. It will require an 18mm box wrench. As I found here, part of the axle assembly runs right in front of the plug, about an inch away. This leaves no room for a socket and ratchet. Because that's all I had, this meant I had to head to the big orange box that typically offers a very miserable shopping experience. Back home and we're ready to try again. This time with something that will actually remove the drain plug. I'm going to use my garage bots to catch the used oil. If you've never seen one, they're pretty cool. I think I got mine at AutoZone. It basically allows one to raise the height of the pan until it's directly under the plug. I've yet to overshoot when using this, and for that, my garage floor is happy. Next up is the removal of the filter housing drain plug. It will require a 6mm hex wrench. I'm also using a long and skinny funnel to try and catch the run out. However, as we can see here, that didn't exactly go too well. The plug dropped in the funnel, I got flustered, and oil all over my face, and it kinda went all over the place. I suppose next time we'll look for another way to do this, maybe one of those flexible funnels. After that's drained out, we'll go ahead and remove the filter housing assembly. This will require a 36mm socket. I've got mine on the end of a 10-inch extension. A few more inches would have helped here. Because there is part of an axle in the way, you'll need to pull apart the filter and housing before dropping down. Once we're all drained out and disassembled, it's time to start putting things back together. After comparing the new and old filters and seeing they are in fact the same size, I'll go ahead and snap into place. A little bit of fresh oil on the new O-ring and we're ready to go. And oh yeah, it's also a good idea to reinstall the filter drain plug right now as well. The less we need to do under the vehicle, the better. As we see here, the manufacturer specs 25 Newton meters, so I'll dial that into my torque wrench and head back down. With our filter assembly back in place and our new oil drain plug installed, it's time for a quick cleanup before reinstalling the plastic undercarriage protection. Now that we're finished up underneath, we'll need to refill with some VW 504 spec 5W30 oil. But how much yet, we don't know. The manual for the 2018 Porsche Cayenne is the only owner's manual I've ever encountered that does not list oil capacity. I looked everywhere. Under instructions on topping off oil, vehicle capacities, technical specifications, it's nowhere. Aside from just reading the thing cover to cover, I don't know where else to look. I assume Porsche deliberately excludes this information to dissuade owners from performing their own oil changes. I consider this a very dick move. When grabbing my new oil drain plug, I asked the parts guy what the capacity on the vehicle was. He responded, "And I shit you not,
Well, we charge out 9 quarts, but I think the actual capacity is around 6 or 7.
He had no clue, but wasn't shy about the fact customers got overcharged. I searched a few forums, but couldn't find a clear answer, so I decided the best way to go about this was to measure what I had taken out, put at least that much back in, and then take some dipstick readings from there. After this minor environmental catastrophe and filling up another empty quart bottle, I was about 6 quarts removed. So that's exactly the amount I put back in the engine before backing it off the ramps. My first electronic dipstick reading was no reading at all. In fact, all I got was the message, "Oil level information on oil level is currently not available." Very annoying. However, after letting it idle on my driveway for about 30 seconds, I was finally able to get some numbers. Max 1.5 quarts oil refill, drive on possible. So, luckily, I had put enough in to not do any damage but was still short. I added 1 more quart for a total of 7 and checked once again. Oil level is correct. So that's what I'm calling it, a capacity of about 7.5 quarts, though I really wish some official source would confirm this. Our final task before moving on for the day is to reset the oil service maintenance indicator. For this, I'm using my launch scan tool plugged into the vehicle's diagnostic port. Okay, and then let's take a look up here and see if that worked. Yay! Yay! As I finish up the day with a little power degreasing of my mess, I have a few final thoughts. Changing the oil on a 2018 Porsche Cayenne isn't really difficult, provided you have the correct tools available. Next time around, I think the process will go a bit smoother as I'll have something better rigged up to catch the oil from the filter housing drain, and will know that I need to refill with 7 to 7.5 quarts of oil. That little guessing game was probably the most nerve-wracking part of the whole endeavor. And that will about do her for today. If you found any of this useful, a like, sub, or especially a share would be greatly appreciated. Okay, take care.